So here we are again, the second episode of the first topic that we decided to take out of the series, getting the leadership team involved in our strategic decisions by the management, right? Creating a culture, inclusive decision-making culture. And, the first episode was really interesting. And for those who have missed out, don't forget to just go through the channel and, view it because it'll make a lot more sense for you to see the second one now. But still, now that you're here, let's do this, CK. So the second episode is about experiential examples, right? The things that we've gone through, the things that you've gone through. And keeping this topic in mind, the things that you've seen in your journey of 3 decades with some of the world class leaders and companies and brands, right? So let's give the audience some really valuable takeaways through the experiences that you've gone through in this specific topic. So we were talking about having a culture where we involve the leadership team in decision making, and that too strategic decision making, right? So in a scenario like this, let's take the first example of how a management can work towards harnessing the best of the leadership team to ensure that those decisions taken strategically works out for the firm. Over to you.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about an entrepreneur context, very different from a corporate context. Because in the corporate context, most of the leaders are, come with a lot of experience. They have good pedigree. They worked in good companies. So, they're already come up with a very fairly structured and organized way of working. Moment you switch over to an entrepreneur setup, the thing is very different because quite often the owners themselves are not very structured, right? The owners are very ad hoc in their decision making. And so that is one problem. That's the problem starts at the top, right? The owners are very unstructured. They take one decision one day, change the decision the next day, try something else the third day, and the team below gets very confused, right? What really are they trying to do, right? The second big distinction I see between a large corporate and an entrepreneur segment is the fact that there are very few leaders in an entrepreneur segment, right? Barring one or two or three of people who are really part of the core leadership team, the rest are mostly managers. They're mostly managers, 5 years experience, 6 years experience, 7 years experience, right? They're just able to manage a team. They're not somebody with 10, 12, 15, 20 years of experience because most entrepreneurs cannot afford those kind of senior people, right? Unless it's a highly funded firm, which can then afford to hire very senior people and pay fancy salaries and get the best from the market, right? Most entrepreneurs are always looking at how to keep their costs down to the minimum. In the process of keeping the costs down to the minimum, they end up compromising on the hiring that they do. So they may have a leadership title, right? Sales head, marketing head, this head, that head. But at heart, they are managers, right? So I think that's where the problem starts. So when you start involving them, sometimes they are not able to think of the big picture. You tell them to do a work, they're very good operationally. But moment you tell them to come up with a plan for the next 3 months, next quarter, next 2 quarters, next 3 quarters, next financial year, they struggle because they have not possibly done that in their previous roles. So this is where I think the entrepreneur has to take support. If he or she cannot do it himself or herself, they should take support of an external mentor or whoever to bring that structure and framework into the organization, which can then become the way of life going forward. So I think it's a lot of hard work in the initial stages to bring in this inclusive culture and make sure you have the right people for the right job.
Correct. In fact, your answer actually kind of made me a little nostalgic, right? One of my previous ventures thing, right? Failure. The biggest thing was I, as the management, like as the founder myself, was unclear on what I was looking at from the leadership team. So when you said that, it so resonated with me because, and not just me, right? I've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, and I can tell that. So I think for me, for all the viewers, all those young entrepreneurs or the nascent businesses, I think they should first evaluate themselves. And if that is required from an external mentor, so be it, right? So I think that makes so much sense. Now let's go to a part where everything's not so beautiful, right, and perfect, right? Let's go for an example where, say, a strategic discussion happened, decisions taken, everything looks good, but then the management sees that during those conversations, the decisions taken were not as suitable as expected for a firm. How does this usual work? How does it work? Does the management recall the team and recall the decision? Or, how does this usually work without ensuring that the team is demotivated, or, they feel, okay, what's this happening, right? Without avoiding chaos. How can that be done?
Yeah, I think there are sometimes decisions taken around uh, continuing with a particular product or continuing with a particular geography, right? Or continuing with a particular marketing initiative, or continuing with a particular vendor who is supposed to be doing something, right? And quite often, I think we see it early enough saying that, look, this is not working, right? So I had this case where, there was this client who was operating in whole of South India. And, I said, is every geography of yours profitable? And they had not even looked at the data, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And when they started looking at state by state, they realized that 2 out of the 4 states they were operating in were actually loss making. Right. Then I asked them, how many of your products are profitable? How many of your products are loss making? Again, once they looked at the data, they realized that there were a lot of products that were actually draining the profitability of the company. Right.
Correct.
Now, these were decisions that they were living with because they had opened the location, because they had those products, they continued to do it. Right. But moment they were able to see the light and see the data and the analytics and realize that, look, it was a wrong decision, right? They were able to quickly take that call that, look, let's not continue bleeding. Let's take a corrective action now. Maybe we can't do it abruptly. Let's do it over the next 3 months or 6 months. Let's gradually phase out, or let us change our approach to those product strategy or to the geography strategy. I've also had an example where they hired a very expensive ad agency, a company that was looking at expanding very rapidly. They spent over 1 crore on an ad agency which they couldn't afford, and they thought that that is the answer to all their problems.
Correct.
And after spending that for 6, 7, 8 months, there was nothing concrete that was visible.
Yeah.
And I think that's again where they realized that it was a wrong decision to have gone in for such a big agency for such a small company. Right? For the agency, this was a very small project. For this company, it was a very big expenditure. So there was a mismatch, right? There again, I think before the next year's contract had to be renewed, they took a call that, look, I think, no, we've already burnt enough money on this. Let's not make the same mistake. So I think there have been enough cases in my experience where, wrong decisions have happened, but the realization has come in soon enough that it's a wrong decision. Let's back out quickly, right? And I think if you stick with the wrong decision, then you're asking for trouble. So I think having the guts to take that thing and say, look, I'm pulling out. I'm pulling out of this. I'm pulling out of this vendor. I'm pulling out of this arrangement, right? So that I get back on track. I think that's a good thing to do. So I think all companies should learn from their mistakes. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm saying mistakes will happen because every decision cannot be right, right? As an entrepreneur, you are taking risks. And it's quite possible that 7 out of 10 decisions work out fine, 3 don't work out fine. But as long as you're quickly alert about those 3 and take corrective action, you're fine.
And I think just to quickly say here, I think there'd be at least 2 people or 2 things that would help an entrepreneur to check this out is, as you said, data. Going back to their business data, checking out, the numbers would always help. And having someone like you, as simple as that, right? As a mentor, as a
anybody,
guide.
a mentor, advisor,
yeah, exactly.
Anybody who's looking at it in unbiased manner from outside, but seeing the gaps very clearly, which sometimes the founders and owners are blind to, right?
Using the business intelligence in simple, right? Using the business intelligence for taking decisions. As we come to the last part again for this video, this episode, is there a checklist which we have when if an entrepreneur or a startup founder is looking at recruiting the leadership team, the next level to them? Is there a checklist there are things that we need to keep in mind when you're recruiting these people?
I think the starting point there is no standard checklist, but I think the starting point, which I find in most cases, is there is no clear job description. there is no clear definition. In fact, most entrepreneurs don't have a proper HR, right? They don't have a proper HR manager or a HR leader. So it's mostly left to some junior HR person who looks after HR and admin to come up with some
Correct.
job description. And they just do what the owner tells them, okay, this is what I'm looking for. This is the kind of person looking for. Some will have recruitment teams that will start looking for that. But they go very wrong in the hiring very often, right?
Yeah.
Because the whole interview process itself is very loose. It's all about I like this person or I don't like this person. It's not looking at the skills, it's not looking at the competency, it's not looking at, will this person fit into our culture, right? So I've seen enough cases of people coming from large organizations, coming into a owner-driven company and running away in 3 months' time. Because they realize this is not my cup of tea. I can't work in this kind of environment, right? Now that should have been figured out at the time of recruitment itself. That will this person fit into our culture,
Yeah.
right? And so I would not call it a checklist, but I find that the whole recruitment process, getting interested candidates, the interview process, sometimes candidates are made to wait for 1 hour, 2 hours for the interview, right? You've lost a candidate then and there. It shows how unprofessional you are. You call a candidate at 10 o'clock, meet him at 12 o'clock. I mean, next time, why would you want to join that company? Right. So that whole building that employee brand that, I would want to be working in this company is something that people don't work on. So to answer your question, there's no checklist, but there is a set of activities which have to be followed with a rigor, right? And always having an external person validating the candidate. Like in my case, even after the department shortlist people, the CEO says, look, we find this candidate suitable. I always say, look, I'll have a call with the candidate as well. Because now I know your organization, I know your culture. I will know whether this candidate will fit in or not. So I have rejected many candidates which they have chosen.
Correct.
Right. So that was sort of preventing a bad decision. So sometimes getting an external person, say, just have a chat with this guy and see that, would he be good for this kind of a role, for our kind of organization? And so there are different checks and balances that can be done to ensure that we get the right kind of talent at the right salary band and somebody who will actually be able to do the role. Otherwise, they come in and within 3 months, I've heard enough entrepreneurs saying this, within 3 months, they write off the person.
Yeah.
Oh, he's not doing well. He's not able to deliver. He's not. I said, why the hell do you hire him in the first place?
Yeah.
You hire him and then you say he's not good in 3 months' time, right? That's not fair on the person you hired. Right? And if we keep doing that and hiring and losing people in 3 months, why would anybody want to join your organization? That's a word of mouth that will spread about your organization. Oh, there nobody works, nobody stays. So I think that's a very important thing, getting the right leaders for the right slots and following that, being very diligent about the whole process, I think makes a big difference.
In simple, identification, recruitment, and retention, right? It all comes down to those three things. Perfect. So thank you for that. And thank you for everyone for joining us here. This was the second episode and a very important topic. Don't miss the third one, because the third one's going to be a free flow between the two experts, especially on this topic. And I hope you've subscribed for both our channels, right, CK? You never ask users to, viewers to subscribe to the channel, right? I've never heard it on your videos.
No, I don't.
I know, that's why I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do that for both of us. So do subscribe for our channel and catch us for the next time.
Thank you.